Kesthyra floated in the middle of the great council chamber. Her body was made of crystal and light, shimmering like water in the sun. She had never felt so afraid in her 300 years of life. The other aliens around her whispered in fear. Some had tentacles that moved nervously. Others had many eyes that blinked rapidly. All of them knew what was coming. The Scarran were coming to destroy everything. The council chamber was huge, bigger than 10 football fields. It floated in space between 3 suns. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in floating chairs around the room. They all looked different. Some were tall and thin like trees. Others were round and soft like clouds. A few looked like giant insects with hard shells and clicking mouths, but they all shared the same fear. Today, Kesthyra's people, the Veilthara, had lived peacefully for hundreds of years. They built beautiful cities that floated above gas giant planets. Their homes were made of living crystal that grew like plants. They never hurt anyone. They traded with other species and shared their knowledge freely. Now the Scarran had found them. The Scarran were different from every other species in the galaxy. They did not build cities or make art. They did not trade or talk. They only consumed. Their ships were alive, grown from flesh and bone instead of metal. When they found a planet with life, they ate everything on it. Then they used that life to make more ships and more soldiers. 12 star systems had already fallen to them. Billions of aliens were dead or enslaved. The Scarran fleet grew larger with each victory. Honored Council, Kesthyra said, her voice carrying musical tones that filled the chamber. My people are dying. Our greatest cities burn. Our children hide in the deep places, waiting for death to find them. Counselor Vextrion clicked his insect mandibles together. His people, the Zenthari, had fought the Scarran once before. Half their worlds were now empty because of it. We know your pain, Ambassador, but what can we do? The Scarran adapt to everything we try. Our weapons become useless after a few battles. Our tactics fail because they learn too quickly. Our defense fleets tried everything, Kesthyra continued. We used plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. We tried viral weapons and gravitational mines. Nothing worked. The Scarran ships healed from our attacks. They grew stronger from our weapons. They learned from our strategies. A ripple of fear moved through the chamber. Every species present had heard similar stories. The Scarran were unlike any enemy the galaxy had known. They did not just conquer. They consumed. They left nothing behind but empty space and drifting rocks. Counselor Lux Miran spoke next. Her people were made of gas and light, floating like colored smoke in the air. Perhaps we should consider evacuation. Help your people escape to safer systems. There are no safer systems, Kesthyra replied, her crystal body flashing with angry light. The Scarran will not stop with my people. They will eat everything in their path. Your worlds will be next. All of our worlds will be next. The truth of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. The Scarran had never stopped expanding. They had never shown mercy. They did not negotiate or compromise. They simply ate everything and moved on. We have tried everything, said Counselor Zeph Callan, whose people looked like walking trees with bark-covered skin. The combined fleets of 5 species could not stop them at Rigel 7. What hope do we have now? Kesthyra's form brightened as she prepared to speak her most desperate words. There may be one option, one species we have not contacted. The chamber fell silent. Every representative leaned forward to hear her words. In the outer spiral, there is a small system called Sol. The 3rd planet from their star is inhabited by a species that calls themselves humans. They have only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They are primitive by our standards. But she paused, her light flickering with uncertainty. But what? Vextrian demanded. They come from what our scouts call a Deathworld. A planet so dangerous that life there must fight constantly to survive. The gravity is crushing. The atmosphere is toxic to most species. Predators with steel-hard teeth and crushing jaws hunt in packs. Natural disasters happen regularly. Yet somehow, intelligent life evolved there. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. Most species evolved on peaceful worlds with gentle climates and abundant resources. The idea of intelligence arising from such harsh conditions seemed impossible. You think these primitive Deathworlders could succeed, or our advanced civilizations have failed? Luxmiran asked, her gaseous form swirling with doubt. I think, Kesthyra said slowly, that maybe we need something the Scarran have never faced before. Something savage enough to match their hunger. Something that understands violence in ways we cannot. The word savage hung in the air like a bad smell. Civilized species did not use such terms lightly. They implied a kind of brutality that had no place in polite society. But the Scarran were not polite society. They were a force of pure consumption, eating everything in their path like a living black hole. The humans have fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. Kesthyra continued. They have weapons designed to kill their own kind. They have strategies built on the assumption that their enemies will fight to the death. They understand cruelty and desperation in ways we do not. And you think this makes them suitable allies? Zeph Callan asked, his bark-covered face creasing with worry. I think, Kesthyra replied, that it makes them the only hope we have left. The vote was close. Many council members feared that inviting Deathworlders into their civilized galaxy would be trading one monster for another. But in the end, fear of the Scarran won out over fear of the unknown. The message was sent to the Sol system within the hour. It carried offers of technology, trade agreements, and full membership in the Galactic Council. But most importantly, it carried a desperate plea for help from a galaxy that had run out of other options. Now all they could do was wait and hope that the Deathworlders would answer their call. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UEN Valkyrie, reading reports from the outer patrol ships. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in the Sol system. The coffee was hot, the crew was alert, and nothing unusual had happened for 3 weeks. That was about to change. Sir, we're getting something weird on the quantum relay, called out Lieutenant Katie Brooks from her station at the communications console. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing buttons and screens. It's not from any human ship or station. Morrison looked up from his tablet. In the 3 years since humanity had developed faster-than-light travel, they had explored dozens of star systems. They had found old ruins, empty planets, and lots of space dust. But they had never found living aliens. What kind of signal? Morrison asked, setting down his coffee cup. It's complex, sir. Multiple harmonic layers, quantum encryption, and it's using mathematical constants that should be universal. Someone is trying very hard to make sure we understand this message. The bridge crew stopped their work to listen. First contact with alien life was something every human had dreamed about. Movies and books had prepared them for this moment, but the reality felt much more serious. Can you decode it? Morrison asked. Working on it now, sir. The computer is running translation protocols. Katie's screen filled with strange symbols and shifting patterns. Got it. It's coming through now. The main display screen shimmered, and then showed the image of something that definitely was not human. A creature looked like it was made of living crystal and light. It floated in the air instead of standing on legs. Its voice was like music mixed with the sound of wind chimes. Greetings, inhabitants of the Sol system, the alien said. I am Ambassador Kesthyra of the Velthara Confederacy. We represent the Galactic Council, a union of 47 species from across this region of space. Morrison felt his heart. Rate increase. This was really happening. Humans were not alone in the universe. The alien continued speaking. We come to you in desperate need. Our civilizations face extinction from an enemy called the Scarn. They are destroyers who consume entire worlds. We have tried everything to stop them, but we have failed. We need your help. Commander Pete Sullivan, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward in his seat. Sir, they're asking for military assistance, but they don't know anything about our capabilities. Let the message finish, Morrison said quietly. Kesthyra's image flickered with what might have been emotion. We know your species evolved on what we call a death world. We know you have experience with warfare and survival that we lack. In exchange for your help, we offer full membership in the Galactic Council, access to our technologies, and peaceful trade relationships with 47 different civilizations. The message included detailed files about the Scarran threat. Morrison watched as the tactical data flowed across his screens. The enemy ships were enormous, made of living tissue instead of metal. They could heal damage and adapt to new weapons. Worst of all, they consumed entire planets to fuel their expansion. My God, whispered Dr. Nancy Clark, the ship's science officer. They've destroyed 12 star systems. Billions of casualties. The crew studied the battle footage included with the message. Alien fleets attacked the Scarran with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything humans had built. Plasma beams that could melt asteroids. Gravitational weapons that twisted space itself. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy matter. At the atomic level, none of it worked for long. The Scarran ships adapted to each attack, growing stronger and more resistant. Their own weapons were crude but effective, tearing apart the elegant alien warships with raw biological fury. They're like a plague, said Lieutenant Commander Bill Foster, studying the tactical readouts. They don't just defeat their enemies. They consume them and use their resources to grow larger. Morrison stood up and walked to the main display. He had served in the human colonial wars, fought against pirates in the asteroid belt, and commanded ships in 3 different conflicts. But this was something new. This was not just about human interests or territory. This was about the survival of civilization itself. Katie, get me a direct line to Fleet Command on Earth. Priority Alpha encryption. Pete, I want a full tactical analysis of these Scarran capabilities. Nancy, start working on biological warfare countermeasures. Bill, prep the ship for immediate departure. Where are we going, sir? Katie asked as she opened the communication channel. To meet our new alien friends, Morrison replied, and to see this threat for ourselves. The connection to Earth Fleet Command took several minutes to establish. Admiral Maria Rodriguez appeared on the screen, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had commanded human space forces for 10 years and had never seen anything. That surprised her. Today was different. Jake, I'm looking at the alien transmission you forwarded. Please tell me this is not some elaborate joke. No joke, Maria. We've got genuine first contact with a galactic civilization, and they need our help with what looks like an extinction-level threat. Rodriguez studied the tactical data for several long minutes. Her experience as a military commander showed on her face as she processed the implications. These Scarran appear to be a true hive mind species. They coordinate perfectly across vast distances. Their bioships are essentially living weapons that learn and adapt. The aliens have failed to stop them using conventional tactics, Morrison said. They're turning to us because they think our experience with warfare might give us an edge. Our experience with warfare, Rodriguez repeated slowly. Jake, these aliens have weapons that make our best ships look like wooden boats. They have shields that can stop planet-killing asteroids. They have faster-than-light communication across their entire civilization. If they can't stop these Scarran, what makes them think we can? Morrison smiled grimly. Because we're not civilized. Maria, look at the alien battle footage. They fight like gentlemen. They follow rules. They try to minimize casualties and protect civilian populations. They retreat when they take heavy losses. And we don't? When's the last time humans followed the rules in a real war? When's this? Last time we retreated just because we were losing? These aliens evolved on peaceful worlds with abundant resources. They never had to fight for survival against predators that could eat them alive. Rodriguez nodded slowly. She understood what Morrison was implying. Humans had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. They had fought wars against their own species for thousands of years. They understood cruelty, desperation, and the will to survive at any cost. You think our brutality might be an advantage? I think our refusal to give up might be what the galaxy needs right now. Rodriguez made her decision. Take the Valkyrie to meet with these aliens. I'm assembling a task force to follow you. 50 ships, our best crews, full combat loadout. If we're going to fight monsters from outer space, we're going to do it right. Understood, Admiral? What are our rules of engagement? No rules, Jake. If these Scarran are really the galaxy-consuming plague they appear to be, then we treat them like any other plague. We burn them out completely. The communication ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity was about to step onto a much larger stage. They were no longer just another species exploring space. They were about to become the galaxy's last hope against an enemy that consumed worlds. All hands, this is the captain, Morrison announced over the ship's intercom. We've just made first contact with alien civilizations. We're heading out to join an interstellar war against a species that threatens all life in this part of the galaxy. This is what we trained for. This is why we're out here. Let's show the universe what humans can do. The Valkyrie turned toward deep space and engaged its faster-than-light drive. Behind them, Earth's greatest fleet began to assemble for humanity's first interstellar war. The diplomatic station Harmony's Edge was the most beautiful thing Admiral Jake Morrison had ever seen. It looked like a giant crystal flower floating in space, with petals made of some kind of transparent metal that glowed with soft rainbow light. Ships from dozens of different alien species docked at ports along its outer rim. Morrison stood in the airlock of the U.E.N. Valkyrie, wearing his best dress uniform. Captain Lisa Torres and Commander Pete Sullivan flanked him, both looking nervous about humanity's first official diplomatic meeting with alien civilizations. Remember, Morrison said quietly, we're here to help them, but we're also representing all of humanity. Everything we do and say will shape how 47 different species see our entire race. No pressure at all, sir, Torres replied with a slight smile. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the most alien environment any human had ever experienced. The corridor was filled with a light mist that sparkled with tiny points of light. The walls curved in impossible ways that hurt to look at directly. Strange music played from hidden speakers, sounding like whale songs mixed with electronic tones. Their escort was a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish, made of silver metal. It spoke through a translation device that made its voice sound like wind through leaves. Welcome, humans of soul. The Council awaits your presence with great anticipation and some nervousness. Morrison nodded politely. We're honored to be here. The diplomatic chamber was enormous, bigger than any building on Earth. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Morrison had seen pictures, but the reality was overwhelming. Some aliens looked like walking trees with bark-covered skin. Others were made of colored gas that shifted and swirled in the air. A few resembled giant insects with too many eyes and clicking mouths. All of them turned to stare at the humans as they entered. Ambassador Casthera floated in the center of the chamber, her crystal body glowing with what might have been relief. Honored Council, I present Admiral Jake Morrison and his officers from the human species of Sol System. Morrison stepped forward and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he hoped would translate across species. Thank you for inviting us. We've reviewed your situation, and we're prepared to offer whatever assistance we can provide. Counselor Vextrian, the giant insect creature, clicked his mandibles together rapidly. His mechanical translator made his voice sound sharp and metallic. Before we discuss military cooperation, we must understand your capabilities. Our sensors indicate some unusual readings from your species. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission xenobiologist, stepped forward with her tablet computer. We prepared some basic physiological data to share with the Council. We believe transparency will help build trust. She activated her tablet, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing human biological data. The reaction from the alien representatives was immediate and dramatic. Several species made sounds of distress. Others physically moved their chairs backward. A few started flashing bright warning colors. These readings cannot be correct, chittered Vextrian, his voice rising in pitch. No intelligent species could evolve under such extreme conditions. Morrison looked at the data Elena was displaying. To humans, it seemed perfectly normal. Human bone density, muscle fiber composition, cardiovascular efficiency, sensory range, neural processing speed. Basic stuff that any doctor would know. To the aliens, it was terrifying. Your bone density is 5 times that of the galactic average, said Counselor Lux Miran, her gaseous form swirling with agitation. Your muscle fibers are compressed to levels we see only in predatory animals. Your cardiovascular system is designed to function in atmospheric conditions that would kill most species within minutes. Captain Torres spoke up, trying to sound reassuring. Earth is a challenging environment. We evolved to survive in conditions that might seem harsh to other species. Harsh? The voice belonged to Counselor Zeph Collin, whose bark-covered face showed what might have been horror. Your planet's gravity would crush most of our bodies. Your atmospheric pressure would rupture our organs. Your oxygen levels are toxic to 60% of Council species. Morrison realized that what humans considered normal living conditions were actually extreme survival challenges for most alien life. We understand that Earth might seem dangerous to other species, but it's just home to us. Show them the predator data, Elena suggested quietly. Morrison hesitated, then nodded. Elena brought up files showing Earth's ecosystem. Images of sharks, lions, bears, wolves, poisonous snakes, and other creatures that humans lived alongside filled the chamber. The alien reaction was even stronger this time. Several representatives made sounds that the translators couldn't convert into words. Others activated what looked like personal defense fields around their chairs. These creatures exist on your homeworld? Vextrian demanded, his insect eyes focusing on images of a great white shark. And your species survived alongside them? We didn't survive alongside them, Torres corrected. We survived by competing with them. Humans are apex predators on our world. We hunt these creatures for food. The chamber fell completely silent. The concept of an intelligent species that was also an apex predator seemed to break something in the aliens. Understanding of how evolution worked, Elena brought up the final set of data she had prepared. Human military history. Battle footage from World War II, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the colonial wars on Mars. Images of human soldiers fighting in conditions that would incapacitate most alien species. Weapons designed specifically to kill other humans efficiently. This is warfare among your own species? Lux Miran asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years, Morrison admitted. We've developed strategies and weapons based on the assumption that our enemies will fight to the death. We've learned to coordinate attacks while under extreme stress. We've mastered the art of violence in ways that peaceful species might find disturbing. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. These humans weren't just Deathworlders. They were apex Deathworlders who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to kill things that were trying to kill them. Counselor Viggs Tryon spoke first, his voice shaking. The Scarran have overwhelmed every species they've encountered, because they fight without mercy or restraint. They show no fear of death. They coordinate attacks across vast distances. They adapt to every strategy we use against them. And now you're thinking that maybe you need someone who fights the same way? Morrison asked. We're thinking, Kesthyra said slowly, that maybe you understand warfare in ways we cannot. The Scarran consume planets to fuel their expansion. They show no mercy to civilians. They fight with biological weapons that terrify civilized species. But you're not civilized species, are you? Vex Tryon continued. You're predators who learned to think and build tools. You're killers who developed space travel. Morrison looked around the chamber at the dozens of alien faces staring at him with mixtures of hope and fear. These creatures had built a peaceful, galactic civilization based on cooperation and trade. They had technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level. They could travel between stars as easily as humans drove between cities. But they had never learned to be truly violent. They had never developed the cold calculation that humans brought to warfare. They had never faced an enemy that required total commitment to destruction. We're not just killers, Morrison said carefully. We're also explorers, artists, scientists, and dreamers. We build cities and write poetry. We have families and celebrate holidays. We want peace as much as you do. But when peace isn't possible? Kesthyra asked. Morrison's smile was grim. When peace isn't possible, we know how to win wars. The vote to accept human military assistance was unanimous. Every species that had spent months trying to find some other solution finally admitted what they had all been thinking. They needed predators to fight predators. They needed killers to stop killers. They needed the Deathworlders to save. Civilization. As the meeting ended and the aliens began making preparations for war, Morrison stood at an observation window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Scarran fleet was consuming another world, growing stronger for their next assault. Soon they would learn what it meant to fight an enemy that had evolved in hell and learned to enjoy the heat. The human fleet assembled at the edge of Valthara space was a sight that would have terrified any civilized species. 50 warships hung in formation like sleeping predators, their dark hulls scarred from countless battles in humanity's violent past. Each ship bore names that spoke of destruction. U.E.N. Rampart, U.E.N. Devastator, U.E.N. Thunder, U.E.N. Lightning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the U.E.N. Destroyer, watching the tactical display show the advancing Scarran biofleet. The enemy ships looked like enormous sea creatures swimming through space, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost hypnotic from a distance. They're bigger than our intelligence reports suggested, observed Captain Lisa Torres from her command ship, the U.E.N. Barracuda. Her voice carried across the fleet communication channel with the calm tone of someone who had seen combat before. Morrison nodded as he studied the enemy formation. Each Scarran bioship was at least twice the size of his largest vessel. There were hundreds of them, moving in perfect coordination like a school of predatory fish. Behind them trailed smaller organisms that served as both fighters and boarding pods. Size isn't everything, Morrison replied. Chief Park, what's your analysis? Chief Science Officer Danny Park spoke from his station aboard the UEN Striker. The bioships are definitely organic, sir. Our sensors show complex internal structures that look more like organs than machinery. They're designed to heal damage automatically and adapt to new threats. Which explains why conventional tactics failed, added Commander Pete Sullivan from the UEN Rampart. The aliens fought honorably, giving the Scarran time to learn and adapt. They followed rules of engagement that limited their effectiveness. Morrison smiled grimly. The Galactic Council species had shared their battle records. With the human fleet, every engagement followed the same pattern. Alien fleets would approach at long range, announce their intentions, give warnings to surrender, and then conduct organized attacks with minimal collateral damage. The Scarran had learned to exploit every aspect of civilized warfare. They adapted to predictable attack patterns. They ignored surrender demands and diplomatic communications. They showed no concern for their own casualties and no mercy toward defeated enemies. All ships implement Epsilon Protocol, Morrison ordered. Every human captain knew what that meant. No quarter given or expected. No prisoners taken. No mercy shown. Complete destruction of enemy forces by any means necessary. It was the protocol they used against pirates and raiders, enemies who had forfeited any claim to civilized treatment. The human fleet split into 3 attack groups, each taking a different approach vector. The tactic was called wolf pack hunting in human military doctrine. Instead of the honorable single-formation attacks that aliens preferred, humans would strike from multiple directions simultaneously. Captain Torres led the first group, approaching the Scarran fleet head-on to draw their attention. Her ships moved in loose formation, weaving unpredictably to avoid enemy targeting solutions. Contact in 30 seconds, she reported. Enemy is responding to our approach. Captain Greg Hamilton commanded the second group using the systems. Asteroid field as cover for a flanking attack. His ships moved between the tumbling rocks like hunters stalking prey. In position for surprise attack. Enemy hasn't detected us yet. The third group, led by Captain Amy Foster, prepared for the most dangerous part of the plan. Her ships would execute a microjump, using their faster-than-light drives to appear directly behind the enemy formation. It was a risky maneuver that could result in collision or system damage, but it would place human weapons at point-blank range. Engaging now, Torres announced as her weapons opened fire. The human attack was unlike anything the Scarran had encountered before. Instead of the elegant energy beams and guided missiles that alien fleets used, human weapons were crude and brutal. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Nuclear warheads designed to cause maximum destruction. Plasma. Beams that burned through armor by raw thermal energy. The Scarran bioships responded immediately, their organic hulls rippling as they began to adapt to the human weapons. But they had never faced an enemy that changed tactics every few minutes instead of every few battles. Second group, execute flanking attack. Morrison ordered. Hamilton's ships emerged from the asteroid field like predators breaking cover. There, weapons fire caught the Scarran formation from the side, targeting areas that were already damaged by the first attack. Direct hits on multiple targets. They're trying to reposition to face us. Third group, microjump executed. We're behind. Them now, Foster reported, as her ships appeared in perfect attack position. Beginning close-range assault. The Scarran found themselves under attack from 3 directions simultaneously. Their bioships began to move in evasive patterns, but human tactical doctrine had anticipated this response. Each group adjusted their attack vectors to maintain crossfire, keeping the enemy trapped in overlapping fields of fire. They're launching boarding pods, warned Lieutenant Commander Rick Chun from the UEN Thunder. hundreds of small organisms heading for our ships. Morrison had expected this. The Scarran's primary tactic was to board enemy vessels and consume their crews, using the acquired biomass to strengthen their own forces. It worked well against alien species who tried to repel boarders using non-lethal methods. All ships, prepare for close combat. Remember, these aren't prisoners to be taken. They're plague organisms to be exterminated. The first boarding pod struck the UEN Lightning. Captain Foster's crew was ready for them. Instead of the civilized defense tactics that aliens used, human marines met the Scarran with flamethrowers, explosive charges, and weapons designed for maximum lethality in confined spaces. Hull breach sealed, reported Sergeant Beth Martinez from inside the Lightning. Hostile organisms eliminated. No human casualties. Similar reports came from across the fleet as human crews repelled boarding. Attempts with brutal efficiency. The Scarran had evolved to fight species that valued life and avoided unnecessary killing. They had never encountered an enemy that treated warfare as a problem to be solved through application of overwhelming violence. "Sir, the enemy is adapting to our weapons," Park reported from his science station. "Their hull composition is changing to resist kinetic impacts and thermal damage." "Then we change weapons," Morrison replied calmly. All ships switched to pattern Delta, gravitational warheads and quantum disruptors. The human fleet began using weapons that attacked matter at the fundamental level, tearing apart the molecular bonds that held the bioships together. When the Scarran adapted to those, human ships switched to viral weapons designed to corrupt organic systems. When that stopped working, they used pure antimatter warheads that annihilated everything within their blast radius. The key was never giving the enemy time to fully adapt. Human doctrine called for changing tactics faster than the enemy could respond, keeping them constantly off balance and unable to predict the next assault. "Enemy formation is breaking apart," Torres reported as her ships pressed their attack. "They're trying to scatter and regroup." "Don't let them," Morrison ordered. "All ships, pursue and destroy. No survivors, no escape." The battle became a hunting expedition as human ships chased down fleeing Scarran biovessels. The organic ships were fast and maneuverable, but human crews had trained for pursuit operations against pirates and smugglers. They knew how to predict enemy movements and cut off escape routes. Captain Hamilton's group cornered a cluster of Scarran ships near the system's outer planets. "They're trying to use the planet's gravity well for a slingshot escape, requesting permission to use planetary bombardment weapons." Morrison didn't hesitate. The Galactic Council had been very clear about the Scarran threat. They consumed everything they touched, leaving dead worlds behind. There could be no mercy, no second chances, no opportunity for them to escape and rebuild their forces. Permission granted. Burn them out. Hamilton's ships opened fire with weapons designed to crack open planets. The Scarran bioships were caught between the human fleet and the planet's surface, trapped in a kill zone with no escape. They died quickly and completely, their organic hulls vaporized by energies that could reshape continents. The battle raged for 18 hours as human ships systematically hunted down every trace of Scarran presence in the system. When it was over, the space around Velthara Prime was filled with drifting organic debris and the cooling hulks of bioships that would never regenerate. "All ships report," Morrison ordered as the last enemy contacts disappeared from his tactical display. Responses came in one by one. Damaged ships, wounded crews, depleted ammunition supplies, but no vessels lost and no missions failed. The human fleet had accomplished something that the combined forces of multiple alien civilizations could not do. They had completely destroyed a Scarran attack fleet. "Sir," Communications Officer Kelly Roberts reported from her station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Scaran hive mind. It appears to be some kind of surrender offer. Morrison stared at the communication request on his screen. In all their battles against civilized species, the Scaran had never surrendered. They had never even retreated. When facing extinction, the fact that they were trying to negotiate meant that humanity had shown them something. The space around Velfara Prime looked like a graveyard. Pieces of destroyed Scaran bioships drifted in slowly expanding clouds of organic debris. Some fragments still pulsed with dying bioluminescence, like the last heartbeats of a massive creature. Human ships moved through the wreckage like sharks after a feeding frenzy, scanning for any sign of remaining enemy activity. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UEN destroyer, watching his crews conduct search and destroy operations. The battle had lasted 18 hours, but the cleanup would take days. Every piece of Scaran biomatter had to be located and destroyed completely. The aliens had warned that even small fragments could regrow into new threats if given enough time and resources. Sir, boarding party has secured the command bioship, reported Captain Lisa Torres from somewhere deep inside the massive enemy vessel. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting in close quarters for hours. The central nervous system is heavily damaged, but still partially functional. Morrison nodded. The largest Scaran ship had been too valuable to destroy outright. Human Marines had fought their way through kilometers of organic corridors to reach its brain center, hoping to capture intelligence about Scaran operations and weaknesses. "What's the status of the hive-mind connection?" Morrison asked. "Still active but weakening," Torres replied. "The bioship is trying to send distress signals to other Scaran fleets. Dr. Park thinks we can intercept and decode some of their communications." The boarding operation had been brutal even by human standards. The interior of the Scaran command ship was like fighting inside a living nightmare. Walls that bled when cut, floors that tried to digest anything that stood still too long. Defensive organisms that looked like giant antibodies with teeth and claws. Sergeant Rick Chun had led the assault team through the worst of it. His Marines used flamethrowers and acid weapons to burn their way through organic barriers that healed faster than conventional weapons could damage them. "The whole ship is one big organism, sir," he had reported during the fighting. "It's learning our tactics and growing new defenses to counter them." But human Marines had advantages that no other species possessed. They could fight effectively while wearing full environmental suits in toxic atmospheres. They could operate for hours in crushing gravity that would flatten most aliens. Most importantly, they could maintain combat effectiveness while suffering casualties that would break the morale of any civilized military force. "Enemy contact eliminated," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster from the UEN Lightning. Her ship was hunting down the last few Scaran escape pods that had tried to flee. The battle. That's the final one. All enemy forces in this system have been destroyed. Morrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The human fleet had accomplished something that multiple alien civilizations working together could not do. They had faced the galaxy's greatest threat and emerged victorious, but the cost had been significant. 3 ships were heavily damaged and would need weeks of repairs. 47 Marines had been killed during boarding operations. Ammunition supplies were critically low. The human fleet had won through superior tactics and determination, but they could not sustain this level of combat for long periods. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission," called out Communications Officer Kelly Roberts. "It's from the Scaran hive mind. They want to talk." Morrison raised an eyebrow. In all their recorded history, the Scaran had never initiated diplomatic contact with any species. They communicated only to demand surrender or to coordinate attacks. The fact that they were reaching out now meant something fundamental had changed. Put it through. The main display filled with an image that was disturbing even to humans who had spent hours fighting inside Scarran bioships. The hive mind appeared as a massive brain-like structure surrounded by writhing tentacles and pulsing organic tubes. Its voice was like the sound of 1,000 creatures speaking in unison. "Human fleet of Sol system," the hive mind said, its words carrying harmonics. "That hurt to hear. We acknowledge your superior warfare capabilities. We request terms for cessation of hostilities." The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. The Scarran had never surrendered to anyone, never retreated even when facing total defeat. They had always fought to the death and beyond, using their bioship's regenerative abilities to continue combat even after suffering catastrophic damage. "What terms?" Morrison asked, his voice carefully neutral. "We will withdraw from all contested systems. We will cease expansion activities in this galactic region. We will not interfere with the species under Galactic Council protection." Morrison considered this offer. It sounded almost too good to be true. The Scarran were offering to give up everything they had conquered and retreat to whatever distant corner of space they had originally come from. "And in return?" Morrison asked. "We require only that your species does not pursue us beyond the boundaries of Council space. We will establish our territory in regions not claimed by existing civilizations." Commander Pete Sullivan, monitoring the tactical displays, leaned over to Morrison. "Sir, our intelligence suggests the Scarran have never made offers like this. They don't negotiate. They consume everything they encounter until they're stopped by force." Morrison understood what Sullivan was implying. The Scarran had learned something from this battle that terrified them. They had encountered an enemy that was better at warfare than they were, and it had shaken their fundamental understanding of their place in the universe. "Your terms are noted," Morrison replied to the hive mind, "but they're not sufficient. The Galactic Council requires additional conditions." The alien brain pulsed with what might have been anxiety. "State your requirements." Morrison had discussed possible terms with the Council before the battle. They wanted more than just a ceasefire. They wanted guarantees that the Scarran threat would never return. Complete withdrawal from all systems you have conquered in the past 50 years. Return of all captive populations that can still be saved. Destruction of all bioship construction facilities in your territory. Reparations paid to the species you have harmed. And most importantly, permanent monitoring stations established at the borders of your territory to ensure compliance. The hive mind was silent for several long minutes. Morrison could see smaller organisms moving within its structure, probably consulting with other parts of the collective intelligence. "These terms are severe," the hive mind finally replied. "You ask us to abandon our expansion and accept restrictions on our growth. We ask you to stop being a plague," Morrison said bluntly. "You've consumed billions of innocent beings and destroyed entire civilizations. The galaxy will not tolerate your continued existence unless you prove you can coexist peacefully with other species." Another long silence. Then the hive mind spoke again, its voice carrying new harmonics that might have been fear. "We accept your terms. Withdrawal will begin immediately. Construction facilities will be destroyed within one standard galactic year. Captive populations will be returned to their homeworlds. Reparations will be negotiated through neutral parties." Morrison felt the tension leave his shoulders. The greatest threat the galaxy had known was surrendering completely. Billions of lives would be saved. Dozens of species would survive to see another generation. "Transmission from Ambassador Kestera," Kelly Roberts announced. The crystalline alien appeared on a secondary display, her form blazing with joy and relief. "Admiral Morrison, the Galactic Council has been monitoring your communications with the Scarran. We are amazed and grateful beyond words. You have accomplished what we thought was impossible. Morrison looked around his bridge at the tired faces of his crew. They had fought for 18 hours straight against an enemy that terrified the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They had won through superior tactics, determination, and a willingness to use violence in ways that civilized species found disturbing. "We did what needed to be done," Morrison replied simply. "The Council wishes to formally welcome humanity as full members of our organization," Kesthera continued. "You will have voting rights, access to all our technologies, and trading partnerships with 47 different civilizations. More importantly, you will serve as our military advisors and defenders against future threats." Morrison considered the implications of that offer. Humanity would go from being an unknown species on the galactic frontier to being the military backbone of an interstellar civilization. It was an enormous responsibility. "We accept the Council's offer," Morrison said after a moment. "But I want to make something clear to all the species watching this transmission. We didn't save you because we wanted power or technology. We saved you because it was the right thing to do. That's what humans do when innocent people are threatened." The transmission ended, leaving the human fleet alone among the debris of their victory. In the distance, Valthara Prime gleamed with the lights of cities that would live to see another day. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were breathing easier knowing that the Skoran threat had been ended. Morrison walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human explorate